All right, everybody, we're going to talk about the toddlers now. And this is one of my favorite age groups. So the toddler, what's the toddlers doing? So this is the age of 12 months to 36 months. And, this is notoriously known as the terrible twos. Um, Toddlers are in an intense period of exploration. So remembering back to the infant, we've now gone from a newborn to at 12 months old, we enter into that toddler age. And what have we done? Well, we have gone from being completely helpless to being very independent. Remember, we're walking, we're saying some words, we're feeding ourselves, we're exploring, we're learning. And with this, we've now entered into Erickson's autonomy stage, right? So we've attached, we've hopefully built those relationships, those attachment relationships, and now we are into this autonomous stage where we want to do everything by ourselves. And with that comes temper tantrums, some obstinacy. We've got an agenda. We have things that we want to accomplish as toddlers. And so that's where these temper tantrums sort of stem from, and this obstinacy to really want to do things on our own. Okay, so weight gain is slowed, right? So we're at about 4 to 6 pounds per year. Thinking back to the infant period of time, in the early infant period of time, we're gaining an ounce a day, right? So a half a pound a week or a pound every 2 weeks. All right, so now we're gaining 4 to 6 pounds a year, right? Birth weight has quadrupled by about 2.5 years old. We're only growing 3 inches per year during this time, so slow, okay? In that step-like pattern, meaning if we grow at a linear pattern, we're going to fall off our growth curve. If we grow step-like, then we're going to follow that growth curve as we age and as we grow. Okay, adult height is usually about 2 times the height at the 2-year-old visit. So 2-year-old visit is a good age to sort of give that sort of long-term predictor of height. There's certainly other factors that play a role, but the 2-year-old height is a good predictor. That anterior fontanelle typically closes by 12 to 18 months. And I know this slide says 12 months, but it would be considered normal to be open until 18 months. Okay, so visual acuity. Our eyes are getting better and better and better. And so thinking back to that infant, right? So the infant binocularity begins to develop between 4 to 6 months. It's well established, certainly by 6 months. So that binocularity, that ability to see 3D, and when that starts to happen at the same time, we start to have developmental things like separation anxiety, stranger anxiety, we reach, we grab, right? All of those things. And then as that continues to develop, we have object permanence around 9 months of age. We know that an object is still there even when it disappears. Okay, so that visual acuity is continuing to refine as we get older. So we're at about 2040, so we're not perfect yet, but this is normal. This is acceptable in this age group. Hearing, smelling, tasting, all of that is increasing. And this is why we oftentimes see toddlers put everything in their mouth still. They are exploring their environment with their senses. And so they are smelling things. They're eating dirt, right? Because that is just their innate way of learning about their environment. Okay, so our maturation of systems. So everything is continuing to mature. We've got this voluntary control for elimination between the ages of 18 and 24 months. And what that means is that the child has the ability to hold their pee, essentially. So they have that voluntary sphincter control. So we can say, okay, I'm not going to pee in my pants right now. We can hold that. Up until that age, they really don't have that maturation to do that. And so if children are potty trained prior to this age, it's typically timed voiding is what they've done. So in other words, you've trained the bladder and the urinary system to void at certain intervals, and that's really what it is. It's not actually voluntary control of that sphincter. Okay, so gross fine motor development. Remember, I said infant development is going to be the most intense, right? Lots of milestones to memorize and to learn. At this point, it really just is refining skills. So if you can get down that infant development, you're going to be able to get this down really, really well. Okay. So locomotion, well, we're already walking by 12 months or around 12 months. Remember, there's that window of that typical development where you have that month that developmental psychologists say this is when the most kids do it. But you have that before and after period that is still considered to be typically normal development. So we're running by 18 months. We're climbing stairs by 2. Okay. So we have this increased, improved coordination. So we're not only walking, but now we're walking better. And you can appreciate this. The 12-monther, remember, is stumbling. They're very uneven. They sort of walk with this heavy gait. But the 18-monther is very steady on their feet. They might get knocked over. They might be able to stay on their feet. The 12-monther, if anything bumps into them, they're going to fall over. So you can appreciate how that sort of coordination improves. Fine motor, now we are increasing our manual dexterity. So what are we learning to do? Well, we're learning to draw. We're holding a crayon. We're holding utensils. We're learning to feed ourselves. We're learning to throw a ball, right? And throwing a ball overhead is one of those developmental milestones that we look for. So psychosocial development, I talked about this, right? That Erickson, that autonomy versus shame and doubt. So what are we doing? We are learning to do things on our own. We want to be independent. And with that comes a little bit of doubt in ourselves and some shame when we can't accomplish what we want to accomplish. And also that development of independence comes sort of these typical I would say nuances that we see in the toddler period of time. So this negativism we're going to talk about, in this ritualism provides sort of that sense of comfort and control. Okay, so Piaget, of course, sensory motor phases. We're imitating what we see at home. So this domestic mimicry is what this is called. So this is where we start to see the kiddos play with the kitchen. They start to cook. They start to take care of babies. And this is not sex dependent. Male, female are going to do the same thing. They want to vacuum. They want to mow the lawn. They want to mimic what they're seeing. And all of this is very appropriate. They're doing this as they're learning about their culture, social norms, and they're imitating these things that they're seeing. Let me go back. Awareness of causal relationships between two events. This is where you start to see problem solving. Okay. And that's really important because you can appreciate this. You've seen sort of maybe the 18-monther or the 2-year-old trying to fit something into a toy, right? Okay, so let's say they're trying to fit a square block into a circle opening. And they're pushing it in there, pushing it in there, pushing it in there, and they look at it and they can see that it's not going to fit. So they want to problem solve that, but they don't really have the upper thinking quite yet to figure out that doesn't really, it's not going to fit no matter how hard you try. So they jam it in there, they try and get it in there, and they get upset. They get really mad. They might get angry. They throw it down. So they know that causal relationship, right? But they don't have that developed thinking to put the square block down and pick up the circle block and fit it into the hole. And that comes a little bit later. Okay, so this is a demonstration of domestic mimicry. So this preconceptual phase of thinking begins around 2 and it ends, somewhere around 4. We are increasing our use of language. All right. So really during this toddler period of time, we are watching language. Language develops exponentially at this point. All right, so think about the 12-monther, okay? The 12-monther has 3 to 5 words with meaning, right? By the time we're done with our toddler period of time, so by 3, and even if you take that into the preschool age at 4, we are speaking in sentences. We are 75 to 100% completely intelligible to a perfect stranger. In other words, if you were to hear my 3-year-old speaking, okay, if Lily, who's 3, was to speak to you, you'd understand about 75% of what she says. Now, she has pretty good language, so you might even understand a little bit more about that. But that's intense. That's only a few years. And if you think about this, everybody. Think about when you took Spanish in high school, and you probably took at least 2 years, maybe 3 years of Spanish, right? Even AP Spanish, maybe, okay? I did. I took Spanish 4 years in high school. Was I fluent? Was I speaking in sentences, completely understanding everything, able to communicate back and forth? So a 4-year-old is able to sit here and talk to a complete stranger just as an adult would. Think about that. Think about how quickly that brain develops language, okay? They are asking those questions of why and how and why things happen. And this is how they're putting all of these pieces together. Okay, spiritual development is happening. You're able to really develop that moral development, that spiritual sort of being within them is really awakened at this period of time, and they're really interested in learning about these things. They're invested. They appreciate that. So it's a very, very important part of that child development. Body image. Okay, so they're learning that some people are girls, some people are boys, and they recognize these gender differences about by the age of 2. Now, interestingly, they associate social norms with girls and boys, and so it's very important to recognize that their understanding of this gender difference is very infantile. Okay, it's very, very, very concrete. In other words, let me give you an example. You might see a girl that has short hair, and a 2-year-old might assume that that's a boy because they have short hair. So they don't appreciate quite yet that those social things that we might associate with gender differences aren't always the case. Okay, so helping them to understand that is really important. You know that everyone is different, and there are differences across genders, and that's perfectly okay. Okay, they might explore genitalia. This is normal. Okay, this is very, very normal. They're curious about their genitalia, and this is normal. Gender roles are understood, and these are gender roles that they're seeing. Okay, so it's important to understand that these are gender roles that they are visualizing on a daily basis. So the gender identity is well established by 3. So I'm a girl, I'm a boy. They understand that, and they begin to play house, and they begin to mimic what they see and what they feel. Social development, they're differentiating out. Okay, so this separation anxiety period of time where they don't want to be away from mom is getting minimized. They're able to be an individual. They're able to be separated for longer periods of time. This awareness of object permanence is there, and they can appreciate that, but it's beginning to be diminished in a sense of sort of where they're focused around it. So they know things exist, but with this individualization that is occurring, they are comfortable being separated for longer periods of time. And with that comes that sort of diminished stranger fear. So you can appreciate the toddler that walks up to every single person in the grocery store and starts waving, right? They're social beings. um, and so they want to talk to everybody. So that stranger fear is diminishing significantly around this period of time.